always saying, did they get that? Sorry, something popped up. But yeah, that, and also when they're like doing their engine installation and I come over and all their safeties are beautiful, when it takes them a while to get that way and they get it and they're excited about their progress too. So I see them grow and myself also.
Lynette, I saw you really nodding when Cindy was talking about that light bulb going off. Can you share sometimes of where you've had that same experience of that satisfaction that you've finally gotten the point across and the comprehension really is there?
It's what I usually call the aha moments. Yeah, and Stacy's right, or Cindy's right. It's one of those where you can lecture about it and you can talk about it, and as soon as you go out and you put it to practice in a lab and they physically see it happen, and it's like, yeah, the light. And when I would teach an electrical course at the airlines, we would start clear back at the very basics of building an electrical circuit with little LED lights. And everybody in A&P school has had, 2 or 3 electrical classes, but how many really got it coming through A&P school? How many of it actually made sense? And a day into it, and we're building a little basic electrical circuit with LED lights and a 12-volt battery, and all of a sudden, literally the light bulbs are coming on, and they're like, oh, it's the aha moments, the things that just click finally. And that's what makes it all worth doing.
Well, I tell you what, Lynette, judging by my electrical troubleshooting skills, I think I need to sit down with you for an aha moment or two. It would do a little bit of good in my life for sure.
It's fun when you can finally get it.
So in our preamble to this conversation tonight, we hit on something that I'd love to talk about a little bit. I think it could be really helpful for our students out there. What precisely is it that makes the end of the semester so challenging for instructors?
You can start this one, Lynette.
You aren't teaching this semester, are you?
Nope.
So yeah, I am coming up on the end of my semester with my students. We have 2 weeks of class left. And as an educator, the lack of commitment by students, you get those students that absolutely take it very, very seriously, are on top of every single project, every single deadline, and are, done weeks before the class is done. And then you have those students that grade wise do just absolutely fine. And eventually they will make a heck of a mechanic because they've got the mechanical aptitudes, but just drag their feet, miss enough classes that they have makeup time due, and are down to literally the end of the semester wire of being threatened of, are you going to get this done and turned in, or are you going to fail the class? Then it's just that as an instructor, you can't force them. But you can't, you can only just keep nudging, and it's very frustrating sometimes.
So this is all surrounded by the historical Part 147, which has a 1900-hour rule. So that delineates if you miss class time during a Part 147 curriculum, you have to make that time up because that time was federally required.
Until September 22nd.
Exactly, right. Would you like to touch on a little bit about what the new Part 147 is going to mean for you two as instructors? Are you excited? Are you nervous? Are you overwhelmed?
I'm not. Yeah, I think actually, honestly, a little bit. I'm kind of excited. So as for anybody that's not sure what's going on with the 147 schools that are attending one, after September 22nd, if their Part 147 is actually attached to an accredited college or university, they do not have to follow the same requirement anymore of having to track all your hours in class. But that is only for 147s attached to an accredited university. If you are going to someplace like AIM, Stacy, correct me if I'm wrong on this, did AIM get approval to join that or not?
I believe they did. I believe they are allowed to circumvent the 1900-hour rule. I would
Okay.
have to get back to you with a final answer on that, but I believe
Okay.
so.
But there are still a few colleges out there I do know that are not attached to 147 and still do have to, or not attached to an accredited college and still have to follow the rules. The way it's going forward with it is, previously we could allow students to pass a class if they could demonstrate knowledge of a subject or being able to do something, even if they couldn't technically pass the lab with a passing 70 or above grade. As long as the overall grade was above a 70 to pass. Now they physically have to pass every single lab. So it's good and it's bad.
That's a very interesting change. I'm very keen to see how this is going to shift the landscape of aviation maintenance education.
From an educator standpoint, for me, it makes it very, very difficult because I can no longer really give out like a 5-point lab and have them miss 2 points on it. Because if I give them a 5-point lab and they miss 2 points, they're now down to a 60% and they failed the lab and they failed the course.
That's a very challenging conundrum.
So as an educator, I've got to completely change how I'm doing labs.
All right. Cindy, do you have anything down your pipeline of how the new Part 147 is going to affect your school in particular?
For now, from what I understand, and I've been off for the summer, so I might be out of the loop of some of the discussions that's been going on. But for now, we actually are going to keep our curriculum to require the time because we are so fearful that the students just won't come. And then they'll show up test day and they'll pass the test and they'll show up lab day and they can do the lab, but they haven't been there the whole time. So I'm not sure how we're going to do the makeup policy since it isn't actually required by the FAA, but we are still going to have an attendance policy. We have always had where you had to pass the labs. So sometimes it takes them 4 or 5 times to get it right. So that's not going to change for us. That has always been in our curriculum that they have to pass all the labs. So I don't think that we are going to change much. And that is our choice. You know, that is our choice to keep it this structured because I think we will have issues. I worry that we will have issues because as Lynette said, so many students, it seems as though they're not really dedicated, you know, so are they dedicated enough? And we had several students who did not do well during COVID when we went online. You know, we were keeping track of their time and they just forgot because it was a nice day out. So I think without that push, that it's going to be harder for them. So as I said, from what I understand right now, last I heard, we aren't really going to what's the word I want? We aren't going to relax our policy much.
Okay. Well, just as a friendly reminder to everyone, the chat is open. So in this webinar, you are welcome to ask any questions you might have for our educators. So Cindy, you mentioned that you have been doing this since 1988. I'm not going to say how I know that that's 33 years, but I can't imagine you had a female instructor in school.
Oh gosh, no.
Right.
There was one other female in my class. You know what? I really don't know where she ended up going because I went straight, the major airline came to my school and hired me and I left. And we didn't keep in touch, but no female instructors. And I'm the only one in my school.
Right. So we still, you know, women make up 2.57% of aviation maintenance technicians. And how do you think being able to showcase the fact that women are eminently capable of performing this job, What kind of effect do you think that has on your students? Have you had any feedback from them on that? Are your male students surprised to walk in and see a woman at the head of the classroom?
Oh, you shake your head no, Lynette?
Not usually, no.
Hmm.
But most of our students have been through the campus and toured it and seen me prior to coming to the first day of class. So
yeah, so I don't think they're surprised to see me, because actually I only get the second year students. I don't teach freshman classes right now. So they know I'm there and they see me. But I do get taken aback by how many have, I shouldn't say how many. There are some I've come across that have an issue with it. And, just like any time that we get a job, we have to prove ourselves to some people, and so towards the end of the semester, maybe hopefully mid-semester, they realize I have a clue.
Well, anyone who talks to you for more than a couple minutes knows that you have more than just one, Cindy. But
it's not lonely.
It's not lonely. For our women who might be working in maintenance training for airlines or other companies, where it's not necessarily so much of a pass fail, I control your grades, so you better act right situation. When you encounter those kind of men, what is your advice on how to circumvent those issues?
Were you sending that to either one of us in particular?
Well, Cindy first, and then off to Lynette, because we'll go to the races.
Okay. It's hard. I don't think there's a cookie cutter way to approach it, because it depends on what they are doing. Is it their behavior? Is it the looks you get when you're teaching? Is it the comments under the breath that you hear? So I will take them aside and just say that, I am here and I have put in my time and I have a right to be here, and they don't have to respect me as a person, but they have to respect my position. And if, so I give them that first warning, and hopefully there's not a second warning. But I just try to do it on a personal level, one-on-one, take them aside, explain where I'm coming from, and explain they are going to deal with women. End of discussion. They're going to go out in the world and there's going to be women. There's going to be women bosses. There's going to be women coworkers, and they just have to realize that we belong there just as much as they do. But, I really haven't had too many that went past that first discussion.
Well, that's great. As long as you can head it off at the pass, that's always a healthy way of navigating that conflict. Lynette, I'm sure you've got a couple of stories on resolving situations like those. Can you share some of your insight?
So at the airline, teaching maintenance there, you're right. We have absolutely no requirements of having to hold them to a grade, to the FAA standards anyway. The airline did require the airline I worked for, we did require that they had to have an 80% to pass all the tests in the class in order to pass the class and not have to repeat it. Which if they ended up having to repeat it, then they were subject to having to deal with their base manager and everybody else as to why. So, but if you ran into somebody that didn't feel they needed to be there, or wouldn't put down their cell phone, or decided to sleep through class, it was one of those that you would just kindly pull them aside and say, look, if you really don't want to be here, you're gladly, I'll send you back to your base manager and you can explain to him why you're back a week and a half early from class. And that was usually enough of a threat to turn them around.
Yeah, that would make me wake up and sit up straight. That's for sure. I wouldn't want to explain to my management why I bailed on required training. So when it comes to airline training versus A&P school training, do you prefer working for with the younger kids in the schools, or do you like the experience of working with the mechanics already in the field? Do you have a preference?
I think I prefer the college students over the airline students. Mostly from the standpoint of, because depending upon the class that I was teaching, I may have had some of the students in the class that would have been a 30-year technician still. They weren't necessarily brand new technicians just because they were at the airline schools. It just depended on what we were teaching at the time. But you get students that are much more receptive to being there and to learning when they're at the college level. Even though, as an educator and as students and everybody, we've all been taught and trained that, once we get that A&P license, that's really just our ticket to start learning, because you're always, as a technician, you're always going to be going to courses, you're always going to be training, you're always going to be learning new things. But at the college level, they know that that's their job right now, is to learn and to be educated. Whereas at the airline, they're like, another class I got to sit through. So
that is what all my guys sound like.
So yeah, I prefer having the students that want to be there.
All right. I think everyone can relate to that. So Cindy, we touched a little bit about your experience in A&P school. How did that experience influence the way you treat your female students?
I have been told I'm tough on my females. Because I think they have to be. It's a tough world for us to go into. So, they can't go and be slackers. It's challenging. It actually is, because I want to be their friend, but I have to be more of a mentor while we're in school, and we might build a friendship. I have a few that I'm still very good friends with that came through my school. So I have to keep that line. But as being a female in an A&P school so many years ago, and now being an instructor at an A&P school, I keep my eye out to see what is going on and how they're interacting with the guys, to make sure that everything is copacetic with them, because I don't want them to be hindered from the very beginning to, let themselves grow by somebody, picking on them or whatever, making it hard for them. We usually, as we have said before, we are one of the few, and I think we have to come together. And I just have to, as I said, keep the professional role, the mentorship role as an instructor. And sometimes I say, are you talking to me as Cindy or as Miss Rodina? And if they say I need to talk to you as Cindy, well, then I can put on a different hat. I'm glad to be able to hopefully influence and help some.
I love that. I love that phrase. Are you talking to me as Cindy, or are you talking to me to Miss Rodina? Because in this industry, we do wear different hats. As you leave your toolbox, as you grow, as you move into leadership roles. And I wish I would have had a female instructor in A&P school, because I think it probably could have circumvented some of the hiccups of my early career. Having someone to go to and learn about those interactions, because I don't think socially we're really equipped to just know how to deal with being the only woman in such a male-dominated industry, and such a demanding industry at that. So I think that it's wonderful that you kind of have that flexibility to give that tough love, and that is so important in preparing these women for what it will be like in the industry. Lynette, I know that you are a passionate mentor of me and many, many, many others. Would you say that has been career long for you, or has that been made more important to you as you have become an educator?
I think it's been career long for me, but it has changed and evolved since becoming an educator. It's one of those where, you know, like Cindy said, you got to, you choose which hat you're putting on when you're talking with female students. But even just through like AWAM itself, and going to conferences, going to different meetings, going to different, you know, locations to different events and stuff, the number of females that I've been able to connect with through, hey, I saw you had a discussion on Facebook one day and I need some help. Would you answer a couple questions for me? And you get a side discussion going with them, to, you know, somebody that you worked with years ago reaching out of the blue and saying, hey, I kind of hit a situation. Would you help me out with it? So it's not just the students that you end up mentoring along the way. It's everybody you connect with throughout the industry along your career. I mean, like Cindy, I've been doing this, you know, 30 plus years, and you don't realize just how many different people you connect with or touch on throughout the course of your career, with this being a female in it. It even to this day, it still really takes me aback when I will get introduced to somebody for the very first time and they're like, oh, you're Lynette. Wait a minute. How do you know who I am? Because being one of that 2.6%, you are gonna be known whether you know it or not. And so trying to mentor everybody, not only just the females, but to mentor everybody, that aviation is such a small industry and such a small community and family, so to speak, that your reputation is going to precede you hugely, and sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. Sometimes people are going to judge you before they even know you, but there's always going to be those hurdles. So how can we help any of them that are asking? You know, it's kind of an odd situation, but I definitely think I've been a mentor pretty much since day one.
You are going to be known whether you know it or not. I hope everybody grabs a pen and writes that one down, because that is the truest truism that I have heard about women in aviation maintenance, I think, in my entire career. I have been advised that the chat function isn't working. I tossed an ops check in and I've been told that people can see it, but they can't type back. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A button as well. And I'm having some questions come through there just fine. So if you'd like to use the Q&A button to ask any of your questions, we will route that way, as unfortunately, I can't do much live troubleshooting of the chat. All right, so Lynette, how do the male students treat your female students? Have you had issues where you've had to intervene? And if so, how did you intervene?
Most of the time, the male students and the female students actually get along very, very well. It's one of those, I have had one female student that I had to pull her aside because she actually wasn't even one of my students yet at the time. She was one of my fellow instructor students. But he was very uncomfortable with how she was dressing. And, you know, when you're dealing in a college where we have a total of 6 females in the building, 7 if you include me, and 120 guys, you know, her walking in cutoff t-shirts and skimpy bike shorts just really made the male instructor, the guys didn't really seem to care. They were okay with it, but made the male instructors very uncomfortable. So had to pull her aside and explain to her that wasn't exactly professional and probably not safe for lab. And I actually had to pull out the not safe for lab in order to get her to change her attire. And she's like, but this is who I am. And it's hard to get through to a student that's like that, but you do. But then again, I've had other female students that the guys hang on every word they say, because the females are actually the leader of the class, leader of the group, leader of, and are taking taking the reins and going at it, top student, the whole 9 yards. But at the same time, if anything were to be said to him or anything were to happen, she's instantly got 12 big brothers. So I don't know that I've ever really had a student that has run into discrimination issues like what I know Cindy and I went through when we were going through A&P school. But I think the culture of the A&P schools is different now.
I would agree with that rather wholeheartedly. More and more of the school directors that I speak to are not only accepting of women, but really advocating for their success in the program. And they are setting the tone for the expectations of their students, which is a really big game changer in getting these women launched in the right direction. But Cindy, why do you think that male and female students seem to get along okay for the most part in school, but women still often face challenges in the actual work environments, sometimes from those very same men?
I think it comes to, I'm in school or I'm getting paid for a job. And right now it's not a competitive world because so many people are hiring, but when it is a competitive world, sometimes they go back to the old ways of looking at things and don't think a female can be there and be making the same money that they're making. And I think it might be almost like a threat to their masculinity. Whereas in school, you're my peer. I'm working with you. And especially as Lynette said, some of the women take great notes. They pay attention, and the male students go to them sometimes for guidance, and most women, we want to help, so they help them. That to me is the big difference. It's a job I'm getting paid for, or I'm at school. We're all here to learn. It's not a competition yet.
That's very interesting. It's not a competition yet, but it certainly does become one. Lynette, do you have anything to add on that one?
Yeah, right at the moment our second year students do a year-long co-op. So they attend classes part-time and work part-time during their second year. And right now, we're at the end of our first year, and my first year students are all interviewing with all the various companies to get their co-op positions and stuff. So now it is that competition of who gets which job offers, who gets which interviews. How come she got an interview, but I didn't get an interview? How come she got this job, but I didn't get this job? And I've had to seriously sit down and explain to my students, we're coming up on scholarship time of year again. And I've said, look, you both 20 years old, you're coming into this, you're both taking a year's worth of A&P classes, but what's going to set you apart on your resume right now? What's going to make the difference to that company that's looking at you is, did you go out and did you apply for scholarships? Did you do volunteer activities? Did you join aviation organizations? Have you done the things that you can put on a resume that puts you that one step ahead of the guy sitting next to you? And tried to explain to the guys that that's all open to them as well. It's not she got the job because of her being a her. It's she got the job because of what she did to get the job. So
that's a fantastic point. As we're coming up on scholarship season, with AWAM scholarships should open in early September. WAI scholarships are open right now. I believe even Choose Aerospace has some scholarships open at the moment. Scholarships are out there. The opportunities are there. They're a great thing to put on your resume and can be a great way to help you pay for school. Cindy, what stance do you take in trying to advocate for your students to apply for scholarships? Because I know when I was in school, I knew about AWAM, I knew about the scholarships, and I didn't apply because I never thought that I could possibly get one. How do you overcome that attitude in your own student population as you encourage them to seek out those opportunities that make them more competitive in the industry?
The squeaky wheel, maybe. As soon as the scholarships are announced, I print them off and I give them to every woman that's in the school and tell them it's free money, and it's an opportunity for you to get your name out there and for the companies to know who you are. The companies doing the applications, or I'm sorry, doing the scholarships. But some of them just, I don't know why, but they don't fill them out right away. And so every, couple days, once a week, I'll just say, hey, so-and-so, do you have that application? Do you need a letter? How's it going? And sometimes that makes them do it. But I am very surprised. Even in my school, we have local companies that give scholarships. And there are years where we have not enough applicants for all the scholarships we have. And I don't understand that. My biggest push is get your name out there, and it's free money.
Yeah, absolutely. Lynette, do you feel like you have to hound your students, or are they kind of taking the bull by the horns and coming to you for recommendation letters?
Usually they come to me for the recommendation letters. Matter of fact, I've that's my weekend chore this weekend is to write several of them. But it's one of those, it goes back to the type of student. Those students that are dedicated, those students that are on top of getting all assignments in, those students that are the A students and not waiting to the end of the semester are the same students that are going to go out and get the scholarships or ask for them. It's a definite mindset and culture to the type of student. And I've got, and it goes to the guys and the girls, because we've got several scholarships that, the guys are eligible for as well, even through the college or through AWAM or MBAA or any of those organizations. And I've got, it's the same set group of gentlemen that come and ask for a recommendation letter. And it's the ones that you would already expect to ask for one.
Fair enough. And that's a big reason why we see companies come on board to offer scholarships, is because they know that the students who are willing to go that additional mile to do the work to apply for a scholarship means that they're those motivated individuals that have that drive. And that is what, companies and employers really want to see. So that's a very big impact to be able to do something like that. In all of your years, Lynette, I know that you have had a lot of really special relationships, but can you tell me about a student that has a special story that really had an impact on you?
Yeah, I had one gentleman, that started out taking first semester freshman classes with me. He was taking night classes, and he started taking classes while I was still just an adjunct instructor. I wasn't teaching full-time at the college yet. And my husband has a background in special needs education. So it wasn't very long into the semester that I understood that this gentleman probably had some real issues. And just taking a guess at it, I was assuming it was, a dyslexia issue or something along that lines. And it's a very tough situation to be in with a student, because as an educator and with HIPAA laws and everything, we really can't ask, but you want to ask because you want to be able to figure out how to help them. And I can see Cindy shaking her head with that one. I pulled him aside one night after a test that he had done very, very poorly on. And I said, I said, you don't have to answer, but I'm asking because I want to try and figure out how can I help you. And he opened up and he explained to me what his situation was. And he is a severe dyslexic. And we figured out that, he had plans in place through high school to be able to help with his testing and his reading. And we were able to work him through the process and figure out that, hey, he can still have that same benefit at college. He can put that IEP or that 504 plan back in place in college. He just had to go to the Office of Disability Services. and he could have that same help. And I actually saw this student at our career fair last month, and I haven't seen him in 5 years. He is just now finishing up with the last of his power plant classes. He's got all of his airframe classes done. He is studying like crazy to try and take his writtens because he knows those are going to be his biggest obstacle. But he is determined. He is not going to let this stop him. And it's just, 5 years later, I think he was as surprised to see me as I was to see him. And he was thrilled that I was at the college full time, passing along to all the students what I had passed along to him. And that really makes it, one of those moments where it just makes it worth it.
That's such a special story. And I'm so glad that you were able to help guide him into getting the assistance that he needed, because, my own husband is severely dyslexic. And when he was attending Embry-Riddle, he didn't realize that they had accommodations for that. And so he struggled and struggled and struggled. And, I think that overall there needs to be a much bigger push in technical schools to provide that kind of assistance, especially outside of a collegiate area where it's already built into the system.
The one thing that really frustrated me out of that situation was that he found out when he goes to take his written testing, the FAA does not fall under the same guidelines of having to service the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Oh,
so
well, I know what's on our next agenda for our Capitol Hill fly-in.
So yeah, even though we can give him all these preparations through A&P school, he cannot use those same preparations to get his A&P testing.
Well, the FAA is always, well, I don't know if we have any feds on here. If so, please close your ears for a second. But the FAA does seem to be a little behind the times. We learned that through the advisory board process and through hard life experience. So hopefully they will understand that, people of all genders, all abilities, everyone is capable of becoming an aircraft mechanic.
Yeah.
I actually know right now there's an individual who is deaf. They're hearing impaired, and they're going through A&P school and getting straight A's. So I really look forward to seeing their journey.
Wonderful.
Cindy, do you or the school counselors coach female students on how to address the different types of coworkers they will encounter in the field, or identifying the type of work culture they're actually stepping into and not the HR pitch?
I have said many, many times, I wish I could have a course on dealing with not just the opposite sex, not just male, female, but differences in people in the workforce. And of course, though, personally, I talk most about the male versus female, not versus, but interactions. I do address it. I pull them aside many times because I see, I observe how they interact with the students. And a lot of what they get in school is the same as they're going to get out in the workforce, just at a different level. So as soon as I start seeing an interaction, let me back up. I try to form a relationship with my female students the minute they walk in the door, even if they're not mine for the next year. I introduce myself. My door is always open. I understand this is tough. Okay, so I do address it as I see it. And then towards the end, we end up, usually chatting a little bit more. You get to know them. I have them in class every day for, 2 semesters. So I do talk to them about stuff, even stuff that I don't see. I'll just tell them about a story, what I saw or what happened to me and how I handled it. And just to let them know that there is going to be that out there. Okay. And not the HR pitch, because when I was a mechanic, HR was not on my side. At least that's the way I felt. Okay. I can't speak for them individually, but so I didn't go to HR. I just had to deal with things on my own. I think nowadays HR is a lot more open whether they're forced to be or not. They're more open to the situations and what can we do to fix it, because they don't want issues to come up afterwards. So I do address it, and I address it in class, because not just, as I said, not just male versus female, but I'll put a crew together, and after a couple of days they'll say, I can't work with that guy. And I'm like, but you have to. Okay, because in the world, you have to learn how to work with people. And I tell them all the time, I am not just putting out A&P mechanics. I am hoping to put out employable A&P mechanics who will be very successful in this career. So they have to learn those interpersonal skills. And as I said, I wish we could have a course that is required. I know they're doing a lot more human factor courses the FAA is requiring, but I wish we could put it more on an individual level in our classes.
It sounds like we need a repeat of our soft skills and aviation maintenance panel from a conference a few years ago. Because that's a great point. We're so focused on the technical aspect of the education and incorporating everything that needs to go under the 1900-hour rule and cram everything into semesters and make everything work, that there just isn't a lot of focus put on interpersonal relationships. But one of the things that I have noticed is, due to the pipeline problem, we are having a lot of companies really come out and say that their work environment and their company culture is a great place to be. I have seen that not make it all the way to the hangar floor. Lynette, do you have any advice on kind of sniffing out what that difference is? How do you sift the truth of what you may be stepping into versus the pitch from the recruiter?
Visit a company. Visit the hangar floor if you can. Talk to technicians that actually work there. Technicians that, if you had to work side by side with them, would they be on your side? Talk to them and get their take on what they think the environment and the culture is, because believe it or not, the guys will tell you if it's an environment you can fit in or not. It's one of those that you have to go into it knowing that this may not be that forever job. And that's a hard discussion I've had with a lot of mentorees through the last several years of, hey, I moved all the way across the country to go work for this company. And now I've got a coworker that I just can't deal with. And HR is not believing me or not taking my side. What do I do? And that's where it becomes you want to give advice, but we can't give advice. We can give personal advice, but we can't give legal advice. And what is right for me in that situation may not be right for Cindy or for you, Stacy, or anybody else, because it's a matter of what is my personal feelings on it, or, is it something that I find offensive versus something you find offensive? It's a very tough situation that if you can figure out sometimes some of the people that already work there, or, it can be a good thing and a bad thing, but sometimes reaching out on social media, and I've seen this post come up several times on some of the A&P pages and stuff about, hey, I got a job offer from this company. Can somebody tell me what the company culture is like? What's the hangar floor like? And believe it or not, people will tell you. They'll talk. If they're happy, they'll tell you. If they're not happy, they will definitely tell you. And sometimes that's one of the best things you can do if you're getting an offer from a company that you really don't know. It's a tough situation.
Can I interject?
Absolutely, Cindy, please do.
I think the bigger the company, the better the culture is going to be. The smaller companies, when you're working with the same 6 guys, whatever, over and over, that's where I think you have more opportunity for conflict. The bigger the company, the laws govern them, it seems more, or they pay attention more to the laws than the smaller companies. But I think no matter where you go, you're going to get some resistance. What I have found that is, if you find your allies, and we have spoken about this many, many times, if you find your allies and they see what's going on, and I'm not saying we need saved, we don't need that white knight riding in, but they might intervene for you and walk up to a guy and say, you know what, you're just being stupid. And one of the things that I always would say, especially to the older gentlemen, is I could be your daughter. How would you feel if someone treated your daughter like that? So sometimes approaching it individually and just kind of making them realize, if they are a reasonable person. I understand some of them aren't, but if they are a reasonable person, to see exactly what they are doing to you. And if they would just, step back, they're going to see that you're a good mechanic, and you have a right to be there. But I think no matter where you go, you're going to run into individuals that are going to give you a problem.
I would, my own personal addition, where I'm going to butt in here rather ungraciously, is pay very close attention to the interview. Interviews are two-way streets, and pay attention to the hiring manager. That hiring manager in that interview, if you're paying attention, they will tell you a whole lot about what kind of company culture that they're really promoting in that environment that you're going to be working in. So that's my 2 cents with that. And as we get close to being timed up, I am going to ask one last question to both of our amazing educators, which is, what advice would you give to a high school graduate about to start A&P school this fall?
My biggest thing for a new student is to take it serious. For 2 years, you're going to bust your butt. It's not like high school. You have to pay attention. You have to take notes. You have to, be involved. But it's 2 years, and your career, your life it's going to be a good life if you buckle down. So many students can skim through high school so easily. You can't do that in A&P school. So if they do want that cushiony career for the rest of their life, they just have to buckle down. But in my opinion, one of the best careers anybody can go into.
I'll second that. Lynette?
I think the advice I usually give that means the most is, if you're getting into it because you enjoy aviation, you have a passion for it, and I would say this of any career, it doesn't matter what career fields you're choosing to go into. If you're going into it for college for a couple of years, go into something that you have a passion for, because then once you get through that 2 years of college, and it's not a job, it's a career. And there's a distinct difference. So if you have a passion for it, if you really like aviation, you like airplanes, you like things mechanical and want to know how it works, then the 2 years will fly by, like Cindy said, and it's a wonderful career. But they've got to understand that it's a serious career that they have to buckle down for, and they have to be willing to take that commitment.
Absolutely.
And you know what, if I might interject here, they're 19, 20 years old when they get out of A&P school. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine being that age. I was older, and walking into a job making as much money, and the opportunities that are out there for them right now at that age, their life is set.
Yeah, absolutely. I see some of the kids walking onto the line right out of A&P school, barely in their 20s, and it's a little different than when we started. That pay scale has gone up and up and up, and will continue to do so because there aren't enough of us. Yeah. And I know that both of you had mentioned that your schools actually have waiting lists to get into the program. So that gives me a lot of hope for our pipelines. We just have to find enough maintenance instructors to fill the capacity.
Or get the colleges convinced that they need to grow the capacity of the college limits. You know, we are hindered by the size of the building we are in.
Well, the industry is definitely, I think it's in the next 10 years, we're going to need 600,000 more. So ladies, buckle up and buckle down. We need you to handle about 300,000 a piece. and we'll be looking for them in 10 years. Well, thank you so much, Cindy. Thank you so much, Lynette. And thank you for everyone who joined us and was asking questions tonight. We are here to always be a resource. You can visit us at awam.org. Our scholarships will be opening in September. And every month we will be doing an Ask Me Anything with a different career path from aviation maintenance. So I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, a wonderful weekend, and a great month. And we will see you the last Friday of next month.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Bye.
Bye.